The moon is mysterious and has inspired many theories over the years, from its origin to its effect on human behavior. There's no shortage of speculation about our closest celestial neighbor. Today, we explore some of the most popular and outlandish theories about the moon and see how they hold up to scientific scrutiny. First, let's start with one of the more realistic theories, the giant impact hypothesis for the moon's formation. This theory posits that the moon was formed from debris kicked up after a massive collision between the early Earth and another planet roughly the size of Mars. According to this theory, the collision would have been so violent that some of the material from the two planets would have been blasted all the way into orbit around the Earth. Over time, this debris would have coalesced to form the moon. Now, evidence for this theory comes from the fact that the moon is rich in magnesium and calcium, which are elements that are found in the Earth's mantle. If the moon did form from material that was blasted out of the Earth's mantle during a giant impact, then it makes sense that it would have the same composition as the elements found there. But not everyone is convinced. Some scientists argue that the composition of the moon is actually more similar to the Earth's crust than the mantle, which would suggest a different origin story. Others point out that the giant impact hypothesis doesn't really explain how the moon ended up so perfectly. A body formed from debris in orbit around the Earth should be more of an irregular shape. And finally, there's the issue of the moon's spin. The giant impact hypothesis predicts that the moon should be spinning much faster, but it's not. So while the giant impact hypothesis is a plausible explanation for the moon's origin, there are still some pieces of the puzzle that don't quite fit. Next, let's talk about the catastrophic theory. This theory proposes that the moon was once part of the Earth and was split off due to a catastrophic event such as a giant impact or volcanic eruption. Proponents of this theory point to the fact that the moon and the Earth are so geologically similar, it makes sense that they were once connected. However, this theory also faces a number of challenges. For example, it's hard to explain how the moon could have retained its atmosphere after being ripped away from the Earth. And it's not clear why the moon's core is so similar in composition to the Earth's core, if it was once part of the Earth. Now, let's move on to something a little more outlandish. How about the theory that the moon is a giant alien spaceship? Proponents of this theory point to the fact that the moon is perfectly, which they claim is evidence that it's not a natural object, but rather an artificial one. They also point to the moon's unusual spin, which they claim is evidence that it's being held up by some sort of advanced technology. There are a lot of problems with this theory. The moon is not perfectly it's actually slightly wider at the equator than it is tall. And while its spin is unusual, it's not unheard of among asteroids. In fact, there are plenty of asteroids out there that are spinning much faster than the moon. And while the composition of the moon is exactly what you'd expect from a chunk of rock in space, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a spaceship. After all, we've only been exploring the moon since the 1960s. We simply know enough about the composition of other bodies in space to say that the moon is more unusual than average. Besides, even if the moon did turn out to be hollow, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a spaceship. It could just be an asteroid that's unusually porous. The truth is, there is no real evidence to support the idea that the moon is anything other than a natural satellite. While its composition and spin are unusual, they're not so unusual that we can't come up with a reasonable explanation for them. And while we may not have all the answers, we can say with a fair amount of certainty that the moon is not a giant alien spaceship. So, there you have it. A survey of some of the more popular theories about the moon. Do you find these theories fascinating or just plain crazy? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more fun science videos. Thanks for watching.